different than I read the newspaper. And this is an interesting way to read the newspaper. But anyway, so I did my book, and then McSweeney's, we agreed that we would start a contest for people, which you can go to, and I urge you not only to go to it, to participate in it. We're now in our 40th week. And the easiest way to get there, if you just go to Convergence Contest on Google, as you can see up there. And if you enter there, you end up here, and it's actually the fastest way is to go there. And you get to the Convergence of Convergences, and I'll just show you. And then, as you can see, there's been like 40 of them, and it's kind of like batting practice for me. People send me these, and I have to judge, which I think is the most interesting that week, and then I respond to it with some comments. Just to give you some examples, this was a good one. Somebody had sent in this photograph from, can you see it okay? That photograph from Iraq of a Marine carrying a group of prisoners, and they said it reminded them very much of this by John Singer Sargent from 1918. The blinded gassed and blinded from a battle. And my response was to say that indeed they are both based on this, which is Bruegel's The Blind Leading the Blind, and it's one of the things that you subliminally experience when you look at that first picture. But that if you wanted to see a really weird World War I Iraq convergence, take a look at this. The iconic image, of course you know, that is the monument to the missing of the Somme, the Battle of the Somme. Isn't that weird? This one left me speechless. I didn't have anything to say to this one. Somebody talked about that iconic image from Goya of Saturn eating his own children. He said, thank God, it's just, the other one was just a painting. I said, amen to that. Somebody sent in this, which is a woman who's just completed the swimming of the English Channel, and said that it reminded her of this, which of course is very true. My response, which is one of the deposition pictures of Christ being taken off the cross, my response was that that was true. It also reminded me of this, which is, you know, Saint Teresa in her ecstasy. And at least in that case, it's both women. I said the nice thing that both St. Teresa and Jesus didn't have to deal with paparazzi, unless you consider the angel the paparazzi in this picture. But then I said, well, or unless you think about old masters themselves as the paparazzi of the Passion. And if you think of that, if you go to a museum and you see all those hundreds of images of the deposition as kind of like flashes in People magazine and Us and so forth, and you get, in which case you kind of, if you imagine this is a whole series of paparazzi taking picture of the same event. After which I conclude by saying, for that matter, flipping the polarities of our analogy, more contemporary paparazzi all agog over this Paris or that Diana, this Brad or the other Jen might well themselves be thought of as latter-day versions of their old master predecessors, likewise enthralled to the transcendental incarnate, star power indeed. Lisa Lee from Chicago sent in, without any comment actually, usually I don't accept it if they don't have a comment, but this was a really good one. Broadway Boogie Woogie, and a Chicago tract neighborhood. This is neighborhoods in Chicago with race and wage details from around the same period, a particular precinct in Chicago, the vitality of Chicago kind of life. To which my response was that, yeah, that is quite uncanny, and it's especially interesting to think about the way that Mondrian, before he came to America, was doing this sort of thing. And what happens when you take this sensibility and put it through that is that you get this. But more interesting yet is the question of why Mondrian had to leave Holland and come to America. And the answer to that, in profound sense, is because he didn't choose to paint like this. This is a painting by a young painter named Adolf Hitler, who knew how to paint a building that looked like a building, and a village that looked like a village, and a flower that looked like a flower, damn it. None of this crap. It's important always to realize that fascism, almost universally, but certainly in mid-century in Germany, rose before anything else as an aesthetic movement. And it was a revulsion by people who knew what a picture looked like against people who were painting expressionist paintings, ugly, Africanized faces, black faces, all that sort of thing. It's very important. It is not incidental that Hitler was a painter. Somewhat facetiously, I would suggest to you that I'm not sure whether Hitler hated modernism because it was a style that Jews favored, or whether he hated Jews because they favored modernism. There's some kind of relationship there, actually. And in fact, one of the first people who get attacked in 1933 are not the shoemakers, are not the leather makers, are not the average Joes or the average Shlomos or the average Moishis. It's the artists, it's the musicians, it's the architects who thereby have a chance to get away. And almost all of them, many of them come to the United States eventually.